We are in the Family Matters series, and Family Matters highlights the importance of the family. And as we're highlighting the importance of the family, we are also taking a look at some of the issues that present themselves within the family relationship dynamic, so that we can see what principles, tools, and techniques we can come out with so that we can take what we hear and apply it in practical ways in our relationships. Is that all right? And so our subject today, the family that prays together, it's not just about a spiritual practice, it's also about having a tool or remembering a tool or using the tool that has been undergirding family for centuries. You've heard me say before that we are all more than we appear to be. We are spirit, soul, body, yes? As spiritual beings, we are healthy, whole, and complete. We are perfect in every way. But there is something interesting about relationships, and the power of relationships is that even though we are perfect in spirit, it's through relationship that our light comes to shine all the more bright. And we all deserve to be in healthy relationships. How many of you know that you deserve to be in healthy relationships? Every hand in the room should be up. Our soul longs for the interaction of healthy relationships. And it helps to know how to create these relationships. And it also helps to know how to set limits and boundaries when the healthy environment that we are creating for the relationships, when those boundaries are crossed. Because sometimes you just got to push back and say, no, not in my house. Or no, not in my heart. Are you with me? And so whether it is the nuclear family, the immediate family, the biological family, or the chosen family, prayer is a key element in helping us navigate these relationships in ways that are healthy, happy, and fulfilling. One of the greatest resources the family has available to it is the dynamic power of prayer. Prayer gives us the ability to persevere through the storm and the ability to have gratitude when it's all good. Prayer gives us the strength we need to overcome the hardships and the patience we need when we recognize that they're evolving too. Prayer also gives us the additional benefit of growing in the one area of primary relationship where we say one of the relationships that's important is our connection to God. Is that right? And if you have family, you just never know what's going to present itself because stuff happens in family. I'm reminded of these parents who had two young sons. One was 8 and one was 10. And there was something about these boys where they were just always being mischievous. They were always in it. They were in it so much so that if anything happened in town, the parents could just about be certain that their boys had something to do with it. And so the mother and the father were just about at their wits' ends. And the mother had heard that there is a rabbi in town who has been successful in helping children alter their behavior. How many of you know sometimes you have to help a child alter their behavior? And so the wife said to the husband, would you be okay if we took our boys to talk to the rabbi to see if the rabbi could be of help? And the father said, yeah, because I'm just about at the end of my rope too, and I'm ready for something to change. And so the father agreed, and the rabbi agreed, and the rabbi said, but let me talk to the youngest boy first. And so the youngest boy went to see the rabbi, and the rabbi sat him in the chair, and the rabbi said to the young man, where is God? And the little boy just stared at him, kind of naive, not sure what to say. And so the rabbi puffed up a little bit more, Desi. He said, where is God? And the little boy still didn't know what to say. And so now with a little bit of fear and trepidation in his eyes, the rabbi said to the young boy just one more time. And this time he pointed his finger at him. He said, where is God? And the 8-year-old boy jumped out of the chair, ran out of the room, and went to his home. And when he got home, he slammed himself in his closet. And his older brother followed him into the closet to find out what happened. He said, bro, we're in big trouble now. They said God is missing. They believe we're the ones who got him. See, in family, you just never know what it is you're going to have to pray for. But as we're moving into looking at prayer as a tool for helping us manage family, it's important to remember that prayer is a powerful lever. And the serious question that we must ask, even though we laugh at the joke, is where is God in our family dynamic? I don't know about you, but I can remember the times and the arguments and the heated battles and the inflection points where the nature of the relationship changed because something was happening. I can remember the terse words. I can remember the upset attitudes. I can remember the torn emotions. But I don't always remember somebody saying, let's stop and pray. How many of you in the family dynamic, when stuff is hot and intense and when people are in their feelings, how many of you remember somebody saying, let's stop and pray? You don't have to answer. But there is power in coming apart, is that right? There is power in taking a step back so that we can give ourselves an opportunity to find God in this experience with. We remember that God is almighty. I want the almighty in the midst of my experience. We remember that God is the underlying unchangeable truth. I want that in the midst of my family. I don't know about you, but we remember that God is the principle of absolute good expressed in all creation. I want to see good in all that I'm interacting with. I don't know about you. And so this is where prayer comes in. We hear the words of Jesus saying that truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth, it will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth, it will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, when two of you touch and agree, powerful things begin to happen. So rather than get upset, get into prayer. And just as a person doesn't have to be present with you to forgive them, they don't have to be present for you to pray for them. Prayer pushes us into the core of a spiritual life, because to pray is to change. And it's hard to pray and be mad at the same time. And so the first thing that prayer does that I want you to put in your notes is that prayer just plugs us in. Say, prayer plugs the family in. Prayer plugs the family in. You can say it again. Go ahead. Because you were kind of weak when you said it the first time anyway. Prayer plugs the family in. Say it. That's right. Act like you're here. Act like you're here. Right? And so much like plugging in any appliance, if you plug it in, the source will do what it is supposed to do. It doesn't matter what my intention is behind how I intend to use it, but if I plug it in, the source will provide. I don't want you to miss that. So then, when we are working through the issues within the family dynamic, or when we are celebrating in the family dynamic, or when we are wanting to grow in the family dynamic, prayer helps us to perceive and penetrate the deeper meaning of the events that are happening in our lives so that we can regain and control our strength, and we can recognize that our spiritual insights come through our prayer. You want to be able to see somebody differently, take them into your prayer closet with you. Don't just talk about them, pray for them. Prayer helps us see things differently. How do you plug in through prayer? You simply enter the experience and expect to be in communion. It's not even all that deep or difficult. And if you will bring not the experience, but the awareness of what's possible in the experience into your communion, what you will find is that your communion starts to bring you out of which is common in the human and into what is more common in the spiritual. Bear with me, I'm trying to get a lot in a little bit of time. And so prayer helps us plug the family in. How do you plug the family in? You plug the family in through your conscious communication with God. You plug the family in through your recognition of God's provision. See, you don't have to enable me if you can see for me what God has seen for you. Are you with me? Prayer plugs us in. Prayer plugs the family in. Now, Jesus had some real particular insights about what prayer was. Jesus said that prayer is what we are connected to. And you and I can note for our family that prayer is what can connect them to. He said that prayer emphasizes the nature of what we are connected to. And we can know for the people that we are in relationship that they have the same connection. I remember being in New York for a speaking engagement. And I wanted to get some errands, so I left the hotel. And when I left the hotel, I was just walking down Fifth Avenue. And as I'm walking down Fifth Avenue and all of these people are around me, I just decided to start praying. There was something about the experience that provoked me to pray. And as I'm walking amongst all these strangers and offering up prayer for all of these strangers, something hit me like a ton of bricks. There was a family member that I have who was working through some issues. But the family member, I believed, encountered the issues because the family member didn't take my advice for how they might have done it. You with me? And so in not taking my advice, I think I unconsciously took them off the prayer list. And as I'm walking down the street praying for all these people, I hear the word say, they deserve your prayers too. And it occurred to me that you don't have to be in alignment with me in order for me to pray with you. See, we can be on the outs of what is supposed to be the core of our relationship, and I can still pray for you. Because when I really understand what God is, and when I really understand what the common union is, the fact that we disagree does not mean that we are separated. Are you with me? And so it was in that moment that the lightning bolt struck me. And I had to call the family member. I said, hey, I'm just praying for you. And they said, thank you. Because I'm working through it even a little bit more right now. She said, but just as you started to pray, I felt something shift in me. So you never know how God is going to use you to stand in the gap for somebody else. Are you with me? See, we just don't know how God might use us to plug in for someone else. Are you with me? Prayer plugs the family in. Prayer plugs the family in. I like to say that prayer is a pulley. And when we understand the nature of a pulley, it gives us the ability to lift or move or transfer a load or apply a force or to move an obstruction or to transmit power in a way that we could never do by ourselves. See, when you start to pray for your family can't help but start to get better. They can't help but be plugged into the power. They might be disconnected in thought. They might be disconnected in word. But if you will plug in and stand in the gap, the power will flow because you're plugged in. And when you plug in, they get plugged in. And when they get plugged in, they get power to move what before they couldn't move. So sometimes the addiction is broken, not because they're ready to get clean, but because you were plugged in. Sometimes they let the relationship go, not because you were badgering them, but because you were plugged in. Sometimes they do better, not because you made them do better, but because they were plugged in. Are you with me? See, one of the unique things about Jesus is that because he was plugged in, because he was plugged in. See, when he went to see the man who had been sitting by the well for 38 years, that's a long time to not be plugged in. Are you with me? But there is something about the knowing or the awareness that just because you have been stuck, it doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. And so what Jesus did was he provided a gap by which the man could be plugged in. And when he got plugged in, he was able to do something that just moments before he wasn't able to do. Just because of the relationship, he was able to get plugged in and use the power that he didn't have just moments ago to pick up and have a new beginning. How many of you know somebody that you're connected with, or you're connected to somebody who's plugged in, and you're knowing for them, or your hope they're knowing for you, that you can have a new beginning? Prayer plugs the family in. Not only does prayer plug the family in, but prayer also turns the family on. Prayer turns the family on. Watch this. Now, when we talk about turning the family on, let me first tell you some ways to turn the family off before you try to turn them on. Because when you understand the nature of God, and when you understand the law of mind action, and when you understand how it works, you recognize that you don't have to beg or beseech in order for the manifestation to come to pass. When you recognize and understand, you recognize that you can worry yourself to death, but it won't change the situation because you're concentrating on the wrong thing. When you understand what prayer is and what prayer is not, you don't have to recite the problem to God. Let me tell you something, that the God that I know is powerful and able, well above my telling of the story. As a matter of fact, God don't even know about that problem. What God knows is about the solution. And I don't know about you, but if I have the solution, then the problem ain't as important. Are you with me? And so there is a way that we can turn the family on if we just understand how prayer works. We have to understand how it works so that we can turn the family on. And watch this. Even the understanding of prayer is not necessarily something that's easily understood. Jesus' disciples were with him for a long time. They had been doing work in the vineyard, folk. And then they get with the master teacher and they say, Lord, teach us how to pray. Now, I don't know about you, but since my mother taught me how to ride a bike, I've never asked anyone else to teach me how to ride a bike. Why? Because that which is understood doesn't have to be explained. Are you with me? And so, by virtue of the fact that they were asking him to teach them, it means they already didn't know. But when we understand, oh my goodness, and when we're taught, this is the beauty of classes. This is the beauty of study. Because now, once they were taught, the folks that they prayed for started doing the stuff that the folks that Jesus prayed for was doing. Are you with me? So how do you pray to turn the family on? I'm glad you asked. You pray in a way that's positive and powerful. You pray in a way where you know that your consciousness, your mind, the way you think, serves as a fusion point for the mind of God. You pray realizing that it requires a deep inner conviction and assurance. See, don't pray studying what's showing up. Pray studying what's possible. Are you with me? You pray and you claim what is yours by right of consciousness, knowing that it's yours by right of consciousness. I know I repeated myself because some of you are praying for somebody else's stuff and you can't get their stuff because it's not yours by right of consciousness. If you're going to pray by right of consciousness, your consciousness will bring to you what is yours. Nobody can give you what is yours by right of consciousness. Likewise, no one can take away from you what is yours by right of consciousness. Let me say it to you this way. No, let me not say that. Let me keep going. So prayer plugs the family in. Prayer turns the family on. But prayer also makes the family strong. How many of you know that a rope has greater strength when it's combined than it does as the individual strands? How many of you know that? Why is that? The individual strands have weak spots all along them. The individual strands have points wherein it's easy for the rope to break, or easy for the strand to break. But the rope evenly distributes the weak spots so that the strength in one area cancels out the weakness in another area. And when you begin to twist and tie the rope together, as the rope becomes bound, the weaknesses that existed at one point no longer exist when the rope is one. I'm saying something to you. We see this exhibited when in the gospel according to Mark. Mark tells us that there was this man who was paralyzed. And it said he was not able to go to the place, or was not strong enough to go to the place where the healing was taking place. So Jesus had returned to Capernaum. And as Jesus is in Capernaum, he's doing all manner of things in this house. Or there is this one idea, or there is this one thinker who is paralyzed by the experience. Can I just unpack it for you metaphysically? See, sometimes when we're paralyzed, it's not that we can't move our bodies, it's that we're not able to shift our mind. And it's not that we're not able, it's just that we're not doing it. Are you with me? See, when a thing is paralyzed, it's unable to move certain ways. How many of you know that not only do we have habits of behavior, but we also have habits of thinking? And so when we have habits of thinking, those habits begin to create patterns and conditions. And when those patterns and conditions take root, they somehow can become just as strong as the rope. Now, when a pattern of thinking is weak in its essence, but supported by other habits of thought that are consistent with it, like I'll never be good enough, or I'll never be worthy enough, or I'm not smart enough, or they said I'm too this, or they said I'm too that, or they say I'm too young, or they say I'm too old. All of these begin to form patterns and habits of thought, and these patterns and habits of thought become the very thing that's hanging us by our circumstances. Are you with me? And so when we see this man paralyzed, he's not able to move and do it on his own. Oh my goodness. But then Jesus says that there are 4 friends or 4 people or 4 other patterns of thought, oh my goodness, that carry him. See, sometimes when you don't know how to shift it yourself, you have to be able to connect to someone who can carry you. See, the beautiful thing about having a family who understands that you have some weaknesses is that when you're related together, they can cover your weaknesses, and those weaknesses can become strong, and they can carry you where you can't carry yourself. Are you with me? And so when you have either family or a stream of consciousness that can carry you when you can't carry yourself, or when a thought can't carry itself, if you get the right 4, those 4 will carry you. Now watch this. I want to give it to you real quick. There are certain characteristics you need to look for in the thoughts that carry you to your manifestation. There are 4 things you need to look for in the thoughts that can carry you to your manifestation. The first thing that you have to be able to look for in the thoughts or the relationships is they have to be committed to carrying you. See, because people who aren't committed to carrying you will drop you when the load gets too heavy. There are some people you used to be with, but when the load got too heavy, they dropped you. Tell your neighbor, if you're going to carry me, don't drop me. So the first thing they have to be is committed to carrying you. The first thing they have to be is committed to carrying you. The second thing they have to be is committed to your overcoming. See, in some relationships, the weaknesses lie in the fact that they are not committed to our being better. And so when we become better, it intimidates. It makes uneasy. It unnerves. And so you need people who can support you in what it is you are trying to manifest. The third thing you need is you need a thought or a person who can go the extra mile. Say, go the extra mile. Because what they found when they got to the house was that there were so many people out front, there was so much confusion out front that they couldn't get through the door. So they had to climb, say climb. They had to climb the experience in order to get him to the roof. In order to get him to the roof, they had to open up the roof, basically saying that it was not easy. See, if you can only be with me when it's easy, we don't have no business together. Because every now and again, the going gets rough. Every now and again, the storm of life shows up. Every now and again, I get outside of myself and you get outside of yours. And so if we're going to be together, we have to be willing to be together through thick and through thin. Are you with me? So they have to be willing to go the extra mile. That's why they say it's never crowded along the extra mile. Then last but not least, they have to have faith. The kind of faith that can pray for you and help you be strong. Because here is what Jesus said to the man who was paralyzed. Or here's what Mark says. It says, when Jesus saw their faith. Not when Jesus saw the faith of the man who was paralyzed, but when Jesus saw the faith of the people who was carrying him. Right? The people who are carrying you, do they have enough faith to help you get through? The thoughts that are carrying you, are they rooted in faith well enough to get through? Because whatever it is you're working to do, whatever it is you're trying to build, whatever it is you want to be, whoever it is you're becoming, there are going to be some challenges in the way. Sometimes it's going to be crowded out front, and the doubt will crowd out the faith. And you've got to have some thoughts around you. You've got to have some people around you. When they see you down, they're willing to pick you up. See, sometimes when you can't carry yourself, you need just a few people who will get down beneath you and lift you up and say, wherever it is you're going, I got the faith to help you make it through. Because sometimes my faith is not enough. Sometimes the doubt is so heavy that I need to lean on your faith. Sometimes my ability to see is so blind that I need to lean on your eyes. You've heard me say it before. One of the things that helped me transform my life is what my grandmother saw for me. No matter what I was doing, no matter who I thought I was, she always saw something else. And she kept her eye like an arrow. And she kept her faith strong. And I believe that as my grandmother was praying for me, she was keeping me plugged in. I believe that as my grandmother was praying for me, she was helping me be turned on. I believe that as my grandmother was praying for me, she was helping me become strong until the place where I could walk on my own and carry myself on my own 2 big spiritual feet. So if she were here today, and I believe she's mighty in our midst, I would say, Granny, you can be proud of your grandson.
because he has learned how to get plugged in. He's learned how to be turned on. Not only has he learned how to be turned on, he's learned how to be turned up. And not only is he turned on, plugged in, and turned up, but he also is strong. And he's with some strong folk doing some great things. I would say, Granny, you did a good job. Thank you for standing in the gap for your baby boy.